Chairman Mao, Jamie Howe, Ho Chi Minh, Asif Din, Václav Havel, Graham Saville, No Surrender, Percy Fender, Guerilla Cricket.
Good morning, good afternoon, good dawn, good dusk, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Guerilla Cricket. I'm Guerilla Hendo, Nigel Henderson. It's so good to be back and with a live series to look forward to. And with the West Indies bravely and selflessly agreeing to a biosecure series in England, it's they we concentrate mainly on in this preview. And to achieve that aim, I am guided by three very wise men indeed. I have Barry Wilkinson all the way from no doubt, a wonderful sunny morning in Barbados. He's broadcaster with line and length there. We have Mach St Patrick Hewitt, well known to Guerilla listeners and viewers, who is now pulling up trees with the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and David Brook, of course, well known to listeners, who will be not just representing Guerilla Cricket for this tournament, or for this series, should I say, but also he will be providing immensely wise feedback to Sportsmax is that Jamaica, David? It is.
The Caribbean. They're throughout the Caribbean.
Throughout the Caribbean. Yeah. Marvellous news. Now,
based in Jamaica.
Before looking ahead to the actual series, I thought a momentous, I suppose, moment last week, the death or the passing of Everton Weekes. Now, I'm pretty sure that amongst the three of you, some of you must have known him a little bit, or even quite well. Barry, you must have had lots of dealings with him. Tell me a little bit about him, and tell me a little bit about the reaction in the Caribbean to his passing at 95 last week.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get to see him bat. He was just a little bit before my time. But I've seen several videos and I've seen several, speeches and several things that he said. Having said that, he was a very close and personal friend with our family and myself, because he was never short of having that kind of ear that I am Sir Everton Weekes. He was approachable. He was an extremely lovely gentleman. It makes no sense perhaps talking about his cricketing exploits, because we all know them. He was part of that famous triumvirate, 3 Ws, World, Weekes and Walcott, Sir Frank Worrell, Sir Clive Walcott and himself, Sir Everton Weekes. So we've lost the last of the living 3 Ws, which I think is very iconic in Barbados. And generally, he was someone who loved cricket, whether it be T20, 50 over or test. Even though he would never have played any one internationals or T20s, he loved being at cricket, and he was a figure that you would always see at Kensington Oval sitting down watching cricket. It doesn't matter what kind of cricket was being played. So he's a big loss to Barbados. He's a national icon. He's a treasure, and he was indeed a hell of a cricketer and even a better man.
Now, I'm sure that David, in his romps around the Caribbean, has been out for a night or two with Everton over the years. Can you reveal anything about those and what sort of bloke he was, Dave?
Well, we've never had an actual excursion, but I have been in his company, had the pleasure of his company at the 3 Ws ground, actually, where everyone sort of sits together. There aren't any directors' boxes or anything. So I had the pleasure of sitting next to him and watching a game. And just as Barry said, he's not one of these legends that looks down on the modern game. He's very much enjoying it, savouring it, and very generous in the way that he talks about it, something he has in common with the great Sir Gary Sobers. And, of course, he was also quite a distinguished broadcaster for a long period. He was the sort of ball-by-ball summariser. And he would say things that were in anyone else's voice wouldn't have sounded particularly anything to note. But when he said them, they carried a weight, way beyond. It was. I remember him talking about Joel Garner, and he said, "Well, he's a very big man, and he delivers the ball from a big height." And that was it. There wasn't anything else that he's added to that, but he just let it sit there, Yeah. And he he never wasted any words in the commentary box. So he would have kept the ball-by-ball commentator on his toes. Did you work with him, Barry?
I never worked with him doing ball-by-ball, because he retired when I would have started, which was just about the year 1999, 2000, when he just decided, look, I want to spend the last years relying on enjoying cricket. And things changed in terms of the rights, because what happened is that he worked for the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation as their comments man. He was the in-house comments man. But then the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation lost rights to the Caribbean Media Corporation, and they didn't use him as their man around the Caribbean. So after that, he just decided to call it a day and move on.
Mash, as a representative of a slightly younger West Indies cricket generation, what do the name Everton Weekes mean to you?
I'm actually glad you said it that way, because I think what's been quite telling in the week or so since the passing is the reaction of the squad. Sorry, I missed that, Barry.
As Mash begins to talk, I thought it was Chris Gill. But then when I heard it wasn't Chris Gill, because he wasn't slagging on Sarwan. So go ahead.
Very good point. Well, you can slag off Sarwan if you want to, Mash. let's deal with Everton first.
So, I think what's been quite instructive is to see the reaction of the West Indies squad of players. This is a very young team, generally speaking, for West Indies in England, and you can see the reverence with which they hold Everton Week in. And I think that's been really encouraging to see, because I think every nation has cricketing royalty. And that's I think that's the way really to remember, not just Everton Weekes, but the three W's in general. And it's you can be years upon years away from when a cricketer graced grounds and showed their brilliance, but it shows that like the outpouring of emotion since his passing shows that he transcended generations of cricket.
Do you think it has anything? Does it have anything to do with the huge representation of Barbados cricketers in that squad? That is why they feel so close to him.
I would say so. I would say that definitely plays a part, but also it probably reflects Jason Holder's leadership and how I think seeing the squad's reaction to me smacked of Jason more than likely saying, let us show our respects in the right way. And that's not just because Jason is from Barbados. I think that reflects Jason as a man as well. But yes, as you say, of course, this is Bayesian cricketing royalty as well. So, and with a Barbados heavy team, that would have a huge impact as well.
Well, let's look forward now rather than back. Well, we've had an extraordinary build-up to this series, really, where no one's played proper cricket. They've played these intra-squad games. A lot of people just say normally with warm-up games you can't read anything into them. Does the intra-squad game bring anything more to that, the sort of rivalries within the squad? I'm wondering what you feel about that, Barry. Has that come to the fore, do you think, in the two games the West Indies have played?
Well, the thing about it is the West Indies team have a lot of Barbadians in the team at the moment. I think there are as many as 9 in the squad, quite a lot. But of course, some of them would have gotten the opportunity because 3 players who are non-Barbadian pulled out of the squad in Shimron Hetmar, Timo Paul, and Darren Bravo. Now, had they been part of the team, which they would have been first choice, you would not have seen as many. So there is inter-regional rivalry. But you'll have to say that the Barbadians on the team have made the team on merit rather than any biased selection.
Mash, your views from watching from afar. I know you've had a chat to at least one of the squad members in Josh D'Souza. What have you grasped from what you've seen up north in the last week or so?
To be honest, I don't think we've learned anything that we didn't know beforehand. I want to say that we should be paying particular heed to, like the big stories are going to be, can the West Indies bat? But we knew that before the warm-up games. So I genuinely don't believe that the warm-up games have probably been better for the reserve players that have travelled than it's been for the first team. Or the first 11. The first 11 that will play on Wednesday is likely to be the first 11 that would have been picked irrespective of the warm-up games. So sometimes you have to play these warm-up games and say, is it literally just to kind of get yourself in nick rather than is a score of 80-odd really instructive as to what may or may not go on? So, I mean, Craig Brathwaite, for example, got 80-odd in the first warm-up game. I would love that to mean that now he's back in form and facing a fired-up Jimmy and Stuart Broad, he's going to be able to repel them. But if come the first day of the first test, he's out before 10 runs, I also wouldn't be surprised. So do you see what I mean? It kind of tells you some things, but at the same time, doesn't really tell you a lot.
Let's talk about that top order and Craig Brathwaite, David.
Just one thing on that, Hendo. Just one thing on that before we leave it. I thought there's a missed opportunity, these warm-up matches, because obviously normally they play against the county and people would say, the county's not very strong, whatever. Yeah. But at least it would be a competitive match. And the plan was the second game was supposed to be first-class status, and then they changed that. But it just felt like a bit low intensity, and I think a number of reasons for that. They played in training kit, which is a bit odd, rather than playing in whites, because surely part of it is visualising the ball against the appropriate background. Also, why did they pick? Why did they pick 25 to come, and then why did they pick the 15 or the 14? Before the tours even started? Why not wait until after the warm-up matches and give everyone a chance of getting into that team? Why create a barrier between squad players and reserve players? Why call them reserves? It's undermining their confidence before you start. Then you've got Josh Silver, who scored 180 runs without being defeated, not given a sniff in a top order that everyone's saying, including the assistant coach, who was stupid enough, I thought, not stupid enough, but unwise enough, to say that, this is Guerilla cricket. It's not as bland as the channels you're on, Barry. He was unwise enough to say that the top order was a concern. I mean, he's the bowling coach. I don't know why he's commenting on it. But given that, Josh Silver did everything, he's done everything required of him, including giving an interview on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. So you can't fault him for his media or what he's done on the pitch. And yet he doesn't get in. An exception is made for Gabriel. So in the press conference today, I put it to the coach. I said, why didn't you pick from 25 rather than 15? And he said that could change after the first test. What he said, I can exclusively reveal. So this is only a squad for the first test, which is kind of a bit, again, a bit odd. Then, of course, the other interesting thing about the warm-up matches is that the coach hasn't had any contact with the rest of the team because they've been scheduled while he was in quarantine. So he's sort of been watching from the balcony. In the manner
that's caused a certain amount of controversy as well, hasn't it? The fact that he was off to a funeral. How do we feel about that? Simmons has just come back as coach of the West Indies, and there's a history there, isn't there, Barry? What is he going to be sort of slightly put off by the pronouncements that have been coming from the Caribbean?
No, he's a very strong character, Phil Simmons. That wouldn't perturb him at all. And I get the impression that he's been given carte blanche to, I wouldn't say do as he likes, but I get the impression he's been given carte blanche to run the ship without any problems or any micromanaging. So that would not deter him. But let me say this. From the onset of this whole biosecure tour arrangement, I had a red flag from the very beginning because I think it's utter nonsense. Well, not the tour per se. I'm talking about the whole thing about biosecure. Now, what really is a biosecure environment? What really is a bubble? It just makes zero sense to me. I thought that players and the England players, if you're going to be playing in an environment in England, certainly you could have stuck to the original arrangement of playing at Lord's, Edgbaston, and the Oval. I don't see how you just playing at one particular venue where you're sleeping and playing will make any kind of difference to you, per se, catching COVID or not. That's just my particular feeling on it. Because I don't care what you say. Everyone who's working at that hotel, everyone who's coming in and out of that hotel has not slept and lived at that hotel. The West Indies players must have come into contact with persons.
Well, Barry, Australia and Pakistan, it's been announced today, are going to play under the same issue. They're going to play at the same grounds in the same biosecure environment. So if they've got it wrong for this series, they've also got it wrong for the rest of the summer too.
Well, they might. Well, I think what will happen, Dave, is that they'll use this tour as perhaps a bit of a benchmark to see how they can judge it. I'm not sure. The Australia and Pakistan teams, they haven't released their squads yet, but will they have a squad of 25 or 30 people as well?
Pakistan will.
Yeah, so I think that it is a great test to see how it will go, but I just don't feel it is cricket. I just don't feel that. I mean, you can advise me, David. In the English Premier League, is Liverpool sleeping at Anfield?
Good point. Well, there was talk, wasn't there, with the Premier League? There was talk that they were going to have games at neutral venues, and then that got cast aside, didn't it?
That's right. They did look like they nodded off during the Manchester City match. That's for sure.
Anyway, that is something that will become, I suppose, more evident. I just think it's a little strange that when you look at the West Indies and the Pakistan series, we're going to have 3 games at Old Trafford, and in a season when we've had no cricket so far, they're taking 3 of the Test matches of the summer to the rainiest part of the UK. It seems extremely odd to me. And I think Mash was up this morning warning us that showers are expected at Southampton on Wednesday and Thursday. Anyway, let's move on from that. Let's talk about some of the matchups that we're going to get in this series, or we think we're going to get. A lot of talk about Ben Stokes v Jason Holder, the second best all-rounder in the world against the first best all-rounder in the world. Is that the only matchup that we've got to be focusing on? Or are there other crucial individual battles, Mash, that you think that are there to be won?
Do you know what? I'm not really focusing on the Ben Stokes, Jason Holder thing. I think that's just a headline because they're 2 very good players. The reality is, and I'll say it again, the focus of this whole series, purely from a West Indies perspective, is can the top 6 bat? That's really this whole series just boils down to that. The West Indies, historically, I keep stating this stat. You go back the last 10 Test matches, the West Indies have passed 250 runs 4 times, and that's if Hetmeyer's there, if Bravo was there, whoever. And this is a weaker team without Hetmeyer and Bravo in, I hasten to add. At least 2 players in every single innings that the West Indies bat have to turn up. Right now, I couldn't even tell you about 1 player turning up. So it's going to be very, very hard. The matchup, sorry, let me answer your question, is how well can the West Indies top 6 repel Jimmy, Stuart Broad? You have to assume Jofra will get the first start over Mark Wood. How well can they repel? I suspect, and everyone always says that I'm pessimistic, whereas I just think I'm a realist. West Indies will be 30 for 3 on a minimum of 3 out of 6 occasions in these Test matches.
Do you think that could possibly be said about England as well, couldn't it, David? I mean, you look at that top 4, especially with Joe Root missing in the first Test. It's bowlers against rather batsmen that have got a lot to prove.
Well, yeah, that England top order isn't going to trouble West Indies too much on paper, is it? And it's only a year ago that England were bowled out for 77 in the first Test at Bridgetown, Barbados, and they folded in the second Test as well. I think that West Indies will be encouraged by that, although statisticians would say that England, like Knackle would probably say at this point, that West Indies' bowling record is not as good overseas as it is in the Caribbean. They average 35 runs a wicket overseas, whereas it's 25 in the Caribbean, so it's a 10-run difference, stats would say. But I wonder if the top order of, Burns had a very difficult tour in the Caribbean, so he's going to be tested out. I could see him going early. I could see them working out Sibley, actually. I'm not sure he's yet established himself. And we know that Zach Crawley is really just starting out. He's a county player. And Joe Denley has spent his whole career as a county player. So, West Indies against any county side would roll them over. And I don't think the top 4, are yet to make that, the transition into real a Test match top order. So if you have a problem with the West Indies top order, you've got to have a problem with the England top order as well. And don't forget, everyone wrote West Indies off last year after losing the first Test in 3 degrees temperature during a day-night experiment in Birmingham at the end of May. But when they actually played in proper conditions at Headingley in the second Test, Shea Hope got a century in both innings. Brathwaite just missed out on the same feat by about 5 runs. So, I think it's more even than people think. 6-1 West Indies is a lot, but probably, on balance, England will be favourites, but not as strong favourites as they have been made by the bookies.
Yeah, Barry, we might be going to see a very low-scoring series here, possibly. Although we are starting the series later into the summer. It's been pretty warm here, hasn't it? Until the last few days, we've had some pretty hot weather. Talking of those guys who did so well at Headingley back in 2017. Shea Hope. What has happened to Shea Hope? I mean, he was seen as a huge rising star, but really his figures since have been terribly disappointing, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, he hasn't played a lot of Test cricket in the time that he's left England. I mean, the West Indies play like 6 Tests a year. Last year, he played, 3 against England, 2 against India, 1 against Afghanistan. So he only played 6 Tests in a whole year, where he played 18 one-day internationals in that entire period. I mean, we don't play a lot of Test cricket, which is unfortunate. So, it's easy to say he hasn't scored a century since 2017, which he hasn't. But that only equates to about 12 Tests. So he hasn't scored a century in about 12 or 13 Tests, which still is a lot. I'm not making excuses for him. I'm just saying that the focus more in the Caribbean recently has been 50 over cricket and T20 cricket. And that's why we haven't seen enough of Shea Hope at the longer version of cricket. In addition, he hasn't played a lot of first-class cricket because the West Indies are usually touring when the first-class season is going on. And David can be up on this. Jason Holder and Shea Hope, Roston Chase, they don't play enough first-class cricket. They're always touring, and they just miss out a lot on the opportunity to seize some time at the crease.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, because a player who'd really impressed me, what I've seen of him, was Nicholas Pooran. But then when I did a bit of research on him, he's hardly played any first-class cricket since he came onto the scene.
He turned down the opportunity to be a full-time player for the Leeward Islands a couple of seasons ago. He was drafted by them to play in their first-class setup, and he turned down the opportunity. So people are calling for Nicholas Pooran, but I think he has to show the inclination for interest first before he, actually can come on and develop himself as a first-class cricketer.
And is that the problem? Someone like Nicholas Pooran, he's playing for countless franchise teams around the world, T10 as well as T20. I mean, does your heart sink, Mash, when you see someone with ability like that just staying in that form of the game?
Do you know what the old version of me would have said? You pick Nicholas Pooran, for just using Pooran as an example, you pick him in the Test team regardless, because we can all see that he's got ability. And the old me would have said, I'm tired of us rewarding players who don't do well just because somebody doesn't play domestic cricket. However, Barry's ultimately right. He at least has to play some first-class cricket. You can't just go... Nicholas Pooran is one of the most talented batsmen in the region. Yeah. Probably after Hetmeyer, he's the most naturally talented batsman in the region. But at the same time, economics talks. I will never be that person who says that a West Indian player shouldn't take the contracts that they get, because you can't make, well, you can now make some kind of living, but why would you turn down huge contracts to go and play a first-class season and just get by? It's the financial realities of playing cricket in the Caribbean.
I think that's a good point, Mash, because you can't blame these guys for playing franchise cricket, earning 10, 20 times much more than playing in the domestic 4-day, because usually domestic 4-day would clash with a whole number of those franchise tournaments. You can't blame people just on the finance, because what needs to happen is that they need to have a plan of action to deal with that huge disparity, which doesn't exist in English cricket. So I've heard Pooran does want to play, is interested in playing Test cricket, but he hasn't qualified, by virtue of playing enough or any 4-day, but didn't stop Joss Butler from being picked. I mean, how many first-class matches did he play? So let's get this into perspective. I think you make a good point, Hendo, that, I put Pooran, Evan Lewis, thank you very much, Hendo. Even if you go back to Pollard in his career, he's scoring anyone that can score 1-day centuries. And by the way, Shea Hope's, been piling on the runs in 1-day cricket and playing a kind of Test match anchor role. Everyone bats around him. So I think, you've got some indication of his ability there anyway. But yeah, there's a whole lot of, for some reason, the Test match West Indies team bears absolutely no resemblance, to the white ball. They wouldn't have to assemble 2 squads. They've actually done it for them. And I'm not sure that's right. And we've seen in Australia and England, they pick the best players, regardless of format. So I think the old you, Mash, was right. Bring him back.
Yes, it's a fair point. I mean, I would love to see Nicholas Pooran. I think he's a better player from what I've seen than Hetmeyer, and I think Hetmeyer's a very good player as well. I was quite shocked. I mean, if you're not following West Indies cricket all day, every day, these things slip you by until you're actually doing research to find out what's going on. And to realise that he's only played 3 first-class matches in 3 or 4 years, it's extraordinary. point is actually true about Joss Butler. He's barely played, apart from a test match, he's played no first-class cricket for about 2 years for Lancashire. So these things do affect both sides.
And he got picked after that 2 year period. During that 2 year period, I should say. It's not like he just started to play first-class cricket to show willingness. He hadn't shown any such inclination. He was picked on the basis of his IPL form.
Well, he was picked on an Ed Smith whim, wasn't he, to a certain extent, or a gut feeling, I suppose. And it started quite well for him. It's gone a little bit pear-shaped for him since, and he's had some difficulties there. What do we think the mood is going to be like in both the camps? I mean, Barry, maybe you've been talking to one or two players. Mash, you've talked to D'Souza. You've been doing the press conference, as you said. David, what have you picked up, Barry, from the people that you know in the camp?
Well, they're quite. Besides the fact that they're quite bored, they're eagerly looking forward to playing some cricket. But I can't believe I'm agreeing so much with David Brooks today. Perhaps it's been the gin I've been drinking. But I agree with the fact that they have not been playing in white, which to me not give any level of seriousness to these games. If they were playing against Sussex, if they were playing against Lancashire, they will be wearing whites and it will be a proper game. This is coming across, these games that they're playing are coming across as scrimmages. And I don't think that they've been taken seriously enough. And that's why we're getting the best.
You can't blame the players. Barry, you can't blame the players for that, can you? There's a lack of intensity from the coaching staff. Yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, most definitely not blaming the players. Whoever's made the decision, I think the right decision.
Lack of attention to detail from Phil Simmons.
More seriously than
Phil Simmons' lack of attention to detail. Tell me his Test cricket credentials, Phil Simmons. I know about him. Spectacular feats in one-day cricket and T20. Let's talk about his Test cricket credentials. He doesn't have any.
Barry or Matt, you want to come back on that?
But David, want to ask you this. Tell me, who do you think is the best cricket coach right now in world? Who do you think is the best cricket coach?
That's an interesting question, but not the one I asked. Which is Phil Simmons? What are Phil Simmons' Test credentials?
The point is that you don't have to be the best at Test cricket to be the best coach. I mean, Jurgen Klopp, how many goals had he scored for Germany? How many goals had he scored in the Premier League? You don't have to be the best coach to be the best, David. So that's a non-point and a non-argument.
I know.
Why not get the Gary Sobers to come back?
I think we were just criticising Buran for lack of interest in Test cricket. Wouldn't it have been good for Phil Simmons to have shown some interest in it? I mean, he hasn't shown any interest in it. He's only been a coach of teams that haven't played a Test cricket. He didn't play very much as a cricketer.
Is it fair to say that between the two of you, we have pro Simmons and anti Simmons? I'm just wondering whether Mash in between sits somewhere in the middle, or what his view on the coaching situation is.
So first things first, with regards to the whites, though, my understanding is one of the reasons they didn't play in them is because the kits weren't ready, which would sound about right in terms of West Indies and organisation. I think they wanted to wait because they've got a new kit sponsor, Castor. They didn't want to wear the white prior to the first test. Go.
I wonder whether that's an all-time first. Cricket team doesn't bring any whites.
No, I think it was an advertising decision. Hogwash.
Mash. That's total hogwash. I would not accept that for any pound in the world, because you're playing in England. You're playing at a place where you can get things done at the snap of a finger. You got a plane to pick up 7 people in 7 territories, and you got them to assemble in Antigua to fly out to England in a biosecure area, and you're telling me you can't get shirts and pants. It's hogwash. I don't buy it. Sorry.
Well, hang on. To be fair, Mash, I do think I did see you tweet the other day, didn't you, about one of the batsmen in a hoodie? You were enjoying it. It was quite a good look, weren't you? Or was that one of your colleagues on the Caribbean?
Yeah, that wasn't me who tweeted that. But that wasn't me who tweeted that. But I do agree with both Barry and David in so much as the first thing that went through my head was, if we're playing in training gear, this isn't really a match. And that's why earlier on, Hendo, when you asked me, that's why I didn't take it seriously. When you asked me, what does it tell you for the test? Nothing. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not really taking any. As Barry used the right word, it's like scrimmage. I'm not taking it seriously.
Are those sort of games any better than just a very, very intense net?
Yeah, but then
Exactly.
I also think though that county games wouldn't have provided any kind.
Yeah.
When the West Indies toured in 2017. I went to their county games against Kent and Essex, and they were a waste of time. And from watching those, I immediately pronounced we are going to get destroyed in the first test because we immediately got destroyed in the first test. So I don't really pay a lot of attention to these games, to be honest. What I would say though, in terms of Phil Simmons and where I stand, do you know what? I'm with Barry. I like Phil Simmons, but here's why I like Phil Simmons. What West Indies need right now is a coach who the players respect as a leader, and Phil Simmons is he is a coach. It's not just about his skills, cricketing skills. It's about, do players actually respond to him? And I think on that respect, and West Indies right now needs a leader like that, where there's a bit more of a harmonious atmosphere. This is my opinion. I could be wrong, but a bit more of a harmonious atmosphere within the camp. And to be honest, it needs to be a West Indian.
Is he a motivator, Barry? Is he a good man manager?
Well, I didn't play at the highest level with him, but from what I understand, the players do like him. They do respect him. Don't forget, he was there before he had a bit of a stint. Shiv Narayan Chanderpaul might not feel the same way because he ended Shiv's career. But generally, I think the players do respect him. The players have shown an inclination to listening to him. He was not given the full chance to get to full Monty. So you have to say that this is a perfect opportunity. I want to see a bit more of him, perhaps another year or two. But it is clear that Phil Simmons gets his way in these things and in these team selections and whatever. So let me see with him getting his way if he's going to get some success as well.
Well,
No, I didn't say I didn't like him. By the way.
Let me just say,
I didn't say I didn't like him. I just said I was doubting his. I think he's been an outstanding coach. I'll make that clear at ODI and T20 level. I was just questioning his test match credentials for a test series. This is a test series. Just like if we went in with Owen Morgan in charge of the test team, it wouldn't necessarily be a great first coaching appointment. And I mean, if we're going to talk about Phil Simmons, though, we should also, cite the circumstances in which he did leave before, when he was criticising the fact that he only had a few certain players to choose from, and he wished he could have more players to choose from, and so on and so forth. So yeah, he is coming to this, second time round, as it were.
Yeah, I guess as a coach, I mean, if you have your hands tied in some way about people you can select and people you can't select, you do feel like, well, I'm being judged on a team perhaps that I haven't really given my complete thumbs up to.
But should you say that?
Well,
should you say that as coach?
Possibly not. Possibly not.
Definitely not.
I've got a very urgent press conference being held by Sir Gary Sobers, so I'm going to leave the discussion. But
I've heard of some lame excuses for leaving our program.
Gary Sobers, who is that man?
An interview with Sir Gary Sobers isn't one of them.
Well, all right. In that case, Barry, if you are going to shoot off to talk to much more famous people than us, we thank you for your contribution. I hope we will have contribution from you throughout the series as well.
Most definitely. Just give me a ring and I'll be there.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we'll say goodbye to Barry, and we've got David and Mash still here. But let's just talk about this fact of Test cricket being played in front of nobody. Now, my feeling is that maybe too much is being made of this because a lot of Test cricket is played in front of nobody these days. Is it really necessary for Stuart Broad to talk to the team psychologist about the fact that there's going to be no fans there? David, you must have some views on this.
I think it's ridiculous of Stuart Broad to do such a thing. You play under any conditions. If you're telling me that he would have trouble, motivating himself in the absence of a crowd, it's just ridiculous. You have to play in the conditions as you find them. And it seems as though, like silence is something that he's, afraid of. And no, I mean, without using the word psychobabble, it does strike me as being, odd that Stuart Broad should have made those statements. I mean, you're still playing for England, and but I
mean, this is the thing, isn't it, Mash? I mean, there is so much Test cricket which is played in front of maybe a couple of thousand people in a huge stadium from time to time. It's not going to be any different from that, is it?
Yeah, and I mean, certainly for the West Indian players, it should make no difference whatsoever. Unless England are touring the Caribbean or in some senses India, slight sense with Australia, a few smattering of Aussie tourists. Generally speaking, if you tune in to watch West Indies Test series on the first day, no matter where you are, no one's there. You might have like a couple hundred, maybe just under a grand. So for the West Indian players, I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever. If it affects anybody, it should affect England because they're used to crowds actually being there. Although in county cricket, you could argue, again, smattering of hundreds here and there, but lots of them don't even play county cricket that often. So to me, it doesn't make any difference. I do wonder, though, and if we're not the ones who should matter, but I do wonder how it, having seen how the Premier League has returned with no fans and like hearing that kind of eerie silence as they're playing, apart from when a goal is scored, I am intrigued to see how different it is watching cricket on TV, knowing no one's there, and just how the acoustics all work. I haven't heard yet if Sky are going to try and overplay like the light smattering of applause when the ball goes to the bat. I don't know what they're going to do about that.
I think one thing they will do, Mash, is they've said that they're going to increase the volume of when ball hits willow, sort of level willow. So I think that's a good thing. And I don't think the silence, it's amazing in this world that we think of silence as being sort of completely unacceptable backdrop, to a game of cricket. I've watched the majority of cricket in complete silence. I remember at Sussex when I grew up watching Sussex, and you really couldn't speak or move during an over. You would certainly be stared at or scowled at by someone. So the whole sort of recent T20 thing of you've got to have sort of music, you've got to know it's a four. It's not really a proper boundary unless you hear music. I'm not speaking about the Guerilla jingles, obviously.
Of course not. That's vital to any Test match, as we know.
Yeah, it's crazy. And as for the fact that the Barmy Army ever influenced the home result, they're just tedious. In home series, the Barmy Army are tedious. In the away series, they're great. In home series, to be honest, if you've drawn the short straw and find yourself sitting in the Barmy Army section, I mean, it's not going to enhance your enjoyment of the Test cricket, I don't think. And Test cricket, not like that. So I think it's going to affect the people watching more than it is going to affect the players. I think as a spectacle to watch, I remember at Channel 4 we used to have this view that we don't cover any sport that where you haven't got a full stadium. We just don't cover it, and we shouldn't be there if it's not something that people want to see. So from a TV point of view, I think it's going to be a bit odd. Do they put some crowd noise? Apparently in football they use the crowd noise from one of the FIFA games or something, but they can't find. They can't find an equivalent match in cricket. But no, I don't think it's going to affect the game. And if it does affect Stuart Broad, then there's plenty of people who replace him in that England side.
Well, I was going to say maybe he'd just like to sit it out in the dressing room, which could actually happen. I suppose we should just acknowledge that. I mean, from the point of view of an England attack, where they've got the choice, they've got Anderson, Broad, Woakes, and Archer. And of course, with Ben Stokes able to bowl as well, you're only going to be picking 3 out of 4 seamers, aren't you? It does seem strange that someone like Dominic Bess would be on the team sheet before Stuart Broad, but that's the kind of situation that we've got now. Presumably, these players are all going to get a go during the series, or certainly during the summer. But it's going to be quite a statement if someone like Stuart Broad does get left out. And is it wise to put Archer and Wood, who we want to see straining at the leash, but who seem to be the most injury prone? Is it wise to put them in the same team at this stage?
Well, Jimmy Anderson's been injury prone as well, hasn't he? And
absolutely.
He'll be approaching this series with just as much apprehension as the West Indian tourist, because he's broken down in the last 2 series. So because for him it's third time out, isn't it? He breaks down again in this series. Well, I don't mean break down, but sort of pull up with an injury, to put it less emotively. If he pulls up for a third time, he won't be back. So he could be facing his last Test match.
So even more reason for England fans to want Archer and Wood to do well. How do you see it, Mash? How do you see that sort of England attack shaping up?
I think if they're taking the attitude that it's 3 back-to-back tests, then all of the players you would assume have been told at the beginning of the series, you're all going to get a game. So unlike in a normal I don't know, let's say this was a normal 3-match series, you might not give Chris Wilkes a game till the third test when the series is already won. But I think, I don't know, because World Test Championship points are still at stake here. So there is that sense that you still have to put your best team out. But this is a long return back to cricket after... this is a return back to cricket after such a long break that you risk players getting injuries if you just go for it's got to be the best team. It's got to be the best team. I mean, certainly in the West Indies camp, there's definitely the sense that they will be rotating as well. So if, for example, Rakeem Cornwall doesn't play in the first test, you have to assume, because Old Trafford takes spin more than the Aegis Bowl would, that he will turn up in the second or third test. So there is definitely a sense that for this series in particular, there will be rotation. And also, I think in England's case, because they know Pakistan is coming up afterwards, there's more urgency for them to protect their players for the next series as well, rather than go all out every single test, burn your players out, and then what are you going to do for Pakistan?
Yeah, well,
there's going to be a...
Yeah, go on, Dave.
Sorry, Hen, I was going to say, there's going to be a time soon, when you wake up one morning and England have got a new opening attack, just in the way... Do you remember that we woke up one morning and there was no longer Harmison and Hogarth?
Yeah.
They were replaced by Broad and Anderson. It just happened overnight. And I think we're leading up to that, where because Ollie Robinson is a Jimmy Anderson waiting to happen. Ollie Robinson's taken more wickets in first-class cricket than anyone in the last 2 years. And if you watch him bowl, he's right up there in the Jimmy Anderson league as of now. I'm not talking about 5-10 years ago, but as of now. And then you got Wood and Jofra. So this could be the series where that double act is broken.
Well, there you are. I mean, you've got those. I think Ollie Robinson's amongst the so-called reserves, isn't he? I was very impressed. I watched a little bit of the feed from the ECB of the England intra-squad game, and I was very impressed just watching a couple of overs from him. Maybe. Do we think this notion of not being able to put spit on the ball or saliva on the ball is going to have any effect at all?
I don't think so. Mash, what do you think?
No, but again, based on what I've seen from the warm-up games for both teams, I'm not convinced.
I've never put spit on the ball myself. Sweat can still be applied, and you can still polish it up. Whatever happens, the old good polish up on the trousers. And in fact, Kemar Roach in the press conference yesterday did say that they've been experimenting West Indies with different forms of, passing it to the sweatiest member of the team. That was one thing that Roach said. The other option was, finding ways of really rubbing, getting the shine by rubbing it on the flannels. So, the Terraline, whatever.
Did we actually find out from the press conference who is the sweatiest man in the West Indies team?
No, we don't. It's definitely not Prince Andrew in the spectators. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. Let's just wrap this up. I mean, we could go on for ages. There is a lot to talk about, really, if people had the patience. But let's just look at this series. As you say, 3 back-to-back tests. So we haven't really had that very often, if at all. In fact, we often have 2 sections of 2 tests back-to-back. But have 3 so close together is going to be interesting. We haven't got a sponsor. We haven't got a title sponsor. It's going to be the Raise the Bat series, and hopefully lots of people will be raising their bats. What do we see? What do we see is happening? I mean, can you see the West Indies building on what they did in 2019, Mash? Can you see an away victory for the West Indies here?
So there will be no victory for the West Indies. That's. I'm not even going to try and discuss that. The best the West Indies can hope for is there's only 2 options West Indies can hope for here. Rain seriously intervenes and means that we only lose 1-0 or maybe draw.
Right.
However, I do think that West Indies can pull off at least 1 test match. Well, say at least. I think they can pull off 1 test match victory. And not because they're mirroring what happened in 2017, but actually the squad is, minus my brother, the squad is probably better and more experienced than it was 3 years ago. And actually, going back to what David said about the England top order, the way I see West Indies winning 1 test match is they bat first. Everyone keeps saying we bowl first, so whichever way. But basically, the England top order is bowled out for under 200. If you do that to any side, you are in the game. So as much as I can be a pessimist and say, but look at the West Indies top order, they're so fragile, you have to assume that the English top order has at least one innings in the course of the series where they also will show extreme fragility. And it's just about, can the West Indies capitalise on that? They only need to do it once. They just need to capitalise on England collapsing one time, and that puts them in a test match in a position to possibly win it. But I don't think they have the consistency to do that across 3 test matches.
Match, they only need... Well, we're talking about a series where West Indies just need to draw the series to retain the Wisden Trophy.
That's true.
You know, if this was the Ashes, we'd all be going on about retaining the Ashes. Wouldn't be talking about, winning the series. Yet for the Wisden Trophy, that's just ignored, as though the competition between the West Indies and England only matters when England hold the Wisden Trophy. The fact that West Indies hold it has not been mentioned by anyone. So I think West Indies only need to win one match. They can draw one, and as you say, the forecast doesn't look great. Maybe one of them be rained off. They need to win one match because I think they probably will lose the first because of the fact that their preparation, has been poor in terms of practice in these conditions. Practice in these conditions, which are very different to playing in the Caribbean. So usually West Indies need a test. Get into it. Yeah. The fact that it's 2 more back-to-back after that plays into the West Indies' advantage. It's a bit like when you go out for the 4th or 5th time, you're going to get runs at some point, aren't you? Going out, you're going to have plenty of chances for those players that are nailed on. That's most of the West Indies batting order, being told they've got the whole series. Certainly got most of the series. So I think it will play to West Indies' advantage, and they may even have only got level fitness, possibly more. That young athletic team. So plenty of bowlers, and I think. When Phil Simmons said today, Hendo, that there could be changes after the first test, this is a touring team with 25 the best players of the Caribbean to choose from. They are capable of finding an 11 that will beat England. No problem at all.
So I suppose most podcasts doing serious things would say, give us a series score, and then we'll be off and having some beers and looking forward to Wednesday morning. What are you going to go for, Dave?
Well, 1-1 from what I just said. 1-1, that's all Wisden is need.
Mash?
2-1 England.
2-1 England. Well, you will be able to find out by joining us on Guerilla Cricket on Wednesday morning at 10:50 a.m. It's going to be a slightly different Guerilla Cricket because, like we are here with the podcast, we're doing it remotely. Knackle and the Bear will be trying to avoid each other in the studio. The rest of us will be scattered far and wide. It's going to be an experience. It's going to be an experience for all of us. It's going to be fun. It's going to be cricket again at last. And I think we can all say hallelujah to that, can we not?
Hallelujah.
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 Thanks for your contribution. And thanks also to Barry. And I hope he's having a very good and informative interview with Gary Sobers, Sir Garfield. All right, guys. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Endo.
Cheers.
Cheers.